My name is Douglas Massey, and I am proud to tell you that I represent the greatest life insurance company in the entire world, The Hartford.
In this episode, we have Doug Massey on the channel. What's awesome about him is not only is he helping agents produce at a really high level, but he's also done it himself. And so in this video, we're going to be going over exactly how to produce at a high level, but then also transition from producing to agency building.
I got into it, got licensed, started the process of selling, really struggled. I quit after like a month. Went back to try and do home improvements. When I went back the second time, I had the right attitude. I knew it worked, I believed in it, and now I just had to do what it takes. And that was really when my life insurance sales career started.
I'm producing 20,000, 30,000 a month consistently. Maybe they had high months, but they're like, okay, I'm kind of getting sick of this, right? I want something new, or I want to take it to the next level. What's your advice to those people? Yeah, I've seen your content for a little bit now, and it's funny because I know I mentioned it on your channel, but like it's funny that like when you get into the final expense industry, you're not in the industry yet. You start seeing these different names, right? There's the Doug Masseys, there's the Dufords, there's the Cody Askins, and everybody kind of starts seeing it. And so I remember watching some of your stuff and then just getting hammered with your ads. So that's probably why when people start watching this, like, oh, I feel like I've seen this guy somewhere, seen his ads. But talk to us, like, okay, you got into the business. How'd you even get into starting to sell life insurance?
Well, great question. Again, thanks for having me. And so back, I was selling home improvements, stamped concrete driveways, screen enclosures, kitchen remodels, you name it. Back then, when I walked into a client's house to give a price, if they said, well, do you do enter anything, the answer was always, of course we do that. And then I'd make it up if I had to and find the subcontractors to do it. So that's the industry that I came from, where you were selling something tangible. Life insurance, completely different. And basically what happened was, so we're talking about 17 years ago, Florida got hit with like 3 hurricanes in my area in a row. And at one point, I remember watching, doing what you're not supposed to do, sitting outside on the front porch in the middle of this heavy hurricane, watching my neighbor's roof just rolling down the street, just turning into this big blob of tin foil that was like 15 foot high, right? Yeah. So after that, it was like, okay, home improvement sales, this was where I was going to make. I was told that I was going to make $500,000 if that ever happened. I didn't even earn $100,000 that year. And the crazy part, so yeah, the aftermath was the following year where I made that $93,000. Yeah. And then right after it, I remember the following year in January having like no leads week after week. And I'm looking at my boss going, I'm on target to make $30,000, man. I can't live like this. Yeah. And I remember talking to a guy that I just kind of knew and, telling him what was going on. And he's like, come by my office. I want to show you something.
Oh, no. Okay.
So, it was actually The Hartford. He was a manager at the local insurance agency. And no, it was a gift. Thank God, life-changing moment. He and I are still friends to this day, and he invited me in, showed me how these leads, you convert them into sales and you get renewals, and sold me on the whole idea, and I was sold on it. And that was when everything changed for me. And I will say, I didn't just jump in it and watch the money come in. I got into it, got licensed, started the process of selling, really struggled. I quit after like a month.
Oh, really? Went
back to try and do home improvements. Yeah. And then like 4 or 5 months later was like, what am I doing? It's that change, that sacrifice, the hard work. It was such a different sale. Yeah. It's very intimidating. So when I went back the second time, I had the right attitude. I knew it worked. I believed in it. And now I just had to do what it takes. And that was really when my life insurance sales career started.
Yeah. So you got into it. What were you selling? Were you selling life insurance right away, or were you selling like
Right. So
everything?
it was mortgage protection. You know,
Oh, okay.
they had the one product, they had the lead, the old direct mail lead. So, you know, here I am
Yeah.
at a 60% commission, paying $30 for leads. You know, and so
Yeah.
think of this is like 17 years ago. You might as well have been paying $60 per lead. That's about what it would be worth nowadays, right? At
Yeah.
that little 60%. And I
Yeah.
really struggled. I had a couple of really cool aha moments though, and where, you know, we had to come into the office every day, Monday through Friday. You had to come in the office. We had a little meeting. We'd talk about the sales from yesterday or the non-sales, the presentations. And by doing this, it was like daily training.
Yeah,
And
that's
really
awesome.
that's where I got my foundation from.
Yeah.
So, you know, one thing I really believe in, at some point we have to pay for our education one way or another. And so that was how I did it. Thank God. Thank God. So a couple of months into it, there was my first aha moment. You know, my boss was telling me, he's like, they're telling me to bring a recorder into the client's house, you know, face-to-face sales was what this was. So I'm driving an hour to South Miami, an hour north to Palm Beach. I'm living in Broward County, so I'm like, the driving was
Yeah.
crazy, and I was afraid to pull out that recorder. You know, this again, 17 years ago, the old little mini recorder. You know, we didn't have the cell phone recorder,
Yeah.
so I finally did. I sat a single lady, just got a condominium, had a job, had a baby, and I couldn't close her. Okay, so the ideal scenario, the lay down, the ultimate, everything you want to walk into, and I
Yeah.
couldn't close her. And that was that first recording.
Do you
And
remember
so
what objection she gave you? Think
I
about it.
don't. I don't. I just, you know, it was the basic, okay, I need to think about it stuff, probably. You know, I just wasn't good. I thought I was better than I was. So I get in the car and I didn't even start the car. I pulled the recording out of my pocket. I hit play and I'm driving that hour drive home. And it's back then, you know, it was like 45 minutes before you gave any prices, right?
That's wild.
And so I didn't know how to overcome objections at this point.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to this drive home and going, holy cow, I had no energy. When I was explaining the way the universal life product that we sold worked, I was explaining it wrong. I wasn't being clear. So I sounded like, you know, my first day. And I was like, I should have done this weeks ago. My managers were all over me. The owner of the company was all over me. I finally did it. And that was when everything changed. Within maybe a day or two, I realized that one of the biggest thing was I was real monotone. I was just talking like this. It was boring. It was like that. And there was nothing to me. There was no excitement. There was nothing. And so they always said in the office to put on the insurance show. And that's when my boss said, let me guess, you didn't have the energy. And I'm like, he's heard me setting appointments on the phone, so he knows I had issues with that. So I'm like, yeah, I didn't have the energy, but that's changed. It's time for the Insurance Man show. And so on my next appointment, I remember walking in there and I just probably had this big goofy look on my face. And, you know, the presentation that we had started off with, first of all, I want to thank you for welcoming me into your home. As I mentioned on the phone, my name is Douglas Massey, and I represent the Hartford. So that was how it started. So I remember I went in there and I was like, okay, I'm jacking this baby up. First of all, I want to thank you for welcoming me into your home. As I mentioned on the phone, my name is Douglas Massey, and I am proud to tell you that I represent the greatest life insurance company in the entire world, The Hartford. And this lady just started laughing, and she was like blown away. It was like everything changed.
Yeah.
And it stayed that way. She was smiling. 40 minutes later, she's writing the check. So back then, you weren't allowed to set up a draft, not with my boss. You were allowed to set up the draft, but not till after you got the first payment. You had to have the first payment. So a lot different than what we do today. So got that check. I remember going in the office. I was all pumped. And that's how it was at that point on. I literally went from like probably the worst agent in the office to being top 3 right then and there. You know, out of like, there's probably about 24 of us in like overnight. So that was that first aha moment. And the second one came when I realized I wasn't doing anything with objections. I was believing the objection, even though, as you know, most anybody who's been in life insurance know, most objections aren't the true objection. I didn't have a system of dealing with it. And so when that changed, that was like the huge game changer for me. So yeah, long story short, that's how I started there.
Yeah.
Now, what happened was we get this, you know, email and phone call from the Hartford, and next thing you know, we're all in the meeting and we're like, well, guys, they're dropping the product, they're dropping the lead program. And so here I am, you know, probably, you know, 2 years into really, you know, being good. I'm like, you know, I'm making a living, you know, so back then, 15 years ago, I'm making 70 grand a year, which was, comparable to probably 120, 140 now. It was, you know, it was comparable to a lot, you know, it was good. I was killing it, and it just got pulled from me. And these guys are like, well, we're going to get into this other thing. And they didn't know what they were doing. And that was when I started going and trying to do mortgage protection on my own, which couldn't find the leads. And then really like found Final Expense. And I remember the first experience with Final Expense face to face. So in Miami, you know, going there and just being like, wow, the homes are really, really disgusting compared to what I was dealing with. Mortgage protection, the people have money. You know, I'm walking into doctors, attorneys, nurses, you know, a lot of people in healthcare. Here, retired seniors with major health issues, and a lot of them, they need people to help them, and they don't even have that. And so it was night and day. And I just remember going, I don't think this is what we want to do, honey. You know, having that conversation with my wife. But then I realized, you know, I kind of hung in there. I sold it like off and on. I was still trying to do mortgage protection on my own. And the light kind of came on, and I realized, well, wait, I'm able to get leads for a lot lower, and the commission I can get is a lot higher. And there's actually a real renewal. The renewals I was getting from the Hartford was like a 3-year 0.5% renewal. It was nothing. I was sold this. It was a bait and switch sell. So that's the one thing I got to tell my buddy. That was a bait and switch sell, but I get it. And so with Final Expense, it's not that way. You know, to this day, I'm getting nice renewal checks from when I was selling Final Expense, which I haven't done in a few years. So that's kind of like how I got into the industry, into the business.
A lot of stuff that I didn't know. So I guess like what are your thoughts on somebody that, because I came from mortgage protection too. Well, I'm curious what your thoughts are now. Like, okay, mortgage protection's definitely evolved and changed. Have you ever considered going back and selling it now?
Not a chance. You know, and I mean, my agency, we don't really deal with mortgage protection. We talk about like any type of insurance, mainly Final Expense. But the thing with mortgage protection was it was this specific niche based on a direct mail lead for people that got a new mortgage. And so now all the IMOs, the multi-level marketing insurance agencies, the ones that push it, that say, oh, you're going to sell, you know, when they recruit an agent, they're like, you're going to sell mortgage protection and Final Expense. First of all, in most cases, the leads are all aged. It's you have to be one of their best agents to even get access to the fresh exclusive leads, which are never exclusive. You'll touch it. Let's say you pay top dollar, which is around $60 now, right? Yeah. You buy that lead. If you don't sell it within a certain amount of time, there's another agent behind you that's getting it. So that whole thing with the mortgage protection, and really that's the only way that lead can work. It's to me, in modern time, it's a fail. And there's one other thing that I noticed, and this is what I still hear from agents that go to those those 4-letter FMOs, like the one that starts with an S and ends with a Y. Every agent that goes there has the same complaint. The leads are all recycled, and most of the time when I get in front of somebody, it ends up being a potential final expense sale, because of the age of the client, because of the situation. So yeah, there's my answer to that. No, man, final expense, it really is so career salesperson, and this is my opinion, the easiest sale you can make. The easiest sale I ever made. When I was selling stamped concrete driveways, the prospects would get this, it was called the flyer. It's basically an ad magazine. And we'd always have the big ad on the front, and it would show this $1 million home with this gigantic driveway. And it would say stamped concrete driveway starting at $1,195. Like they're going to get one for $1,200. And I'd go to these little bitty houses with these little bitty driveways and show them how their driveway's $8,000, or $20,000 if it was a big house. So that was a hard sale. Yeah. So once I understood life insurance, from mortgage protection to final expense, it was like, ooh, this is easy. These folks need it. Most of them have health issues. They've been turned down before. They understand it. At this point, in most cases, they've let so much time pass, and now they've exaggerated. Now it's like you'd have to be, and I know somebody's going to watch this and go, well, that's not very nice, Doug. But the truth is, if you can't sell final expense, you probably shouldn't be selling anything. Like, it's just too easy compared to everything else out there. Maybe Medicare products in a sense, but there's no upfront money. It's minimum. The lead cost is expensive. And now what's going on? I sat there and watched a podcast a couple of friends put on, and they're talking about how these carriers are no longer even paying commissions. Like, they're pulling out. They're figuring out ways to pull out of Medicare. So yeah, final expense, whether you're doing telesales or face-to-face, easiest thing in the world to sell. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that makes sense. So obviously, like, as you start producing, what I realize is like, okay, you could start making money as a producer, but then there's like two paths you go down, right? So like some people are like, okay, I'm gonna go upstream in advanced market. Some people are like, I'm gonna build a team. Some people are like, oh, I'm gonna do everything, like, or some people, what I've realized is like there's another evolution of like cross sell and like going to Medicare, right? So it's like there's this fork in the road that people get to, right? What is your, I guess, like, when people get to that fork in the road that's like, okay, I've sold this, I'm producing 20,000, 30,000 a month consistently. Maybe they've had high months, but they're like, okay, I'm kind of getting sick of this, right? I want something new, or I want to take it to the next level. What's your advice to those people?
That's good. Look, my story, the one thing I did right was I didn't start United Final Expense Services, my agency, until I was at least 5-6 years in the business. So now we're talking not just 5-6 years in the business, but 5-6 years as a producer, selling at a high end. So I knew. And so back when I started my little YouTube channel in, let's see, I believe it's 10 years now. I believe it was 2015.
Wow.
There was three of us. There was Dave, there was Cody, and they beat me to it. And then I came in behind them. And so it was easy. You put out a video, and the quality we were doing was just crapola. You put out a video talking about final expense, and like, I'm not exaggerating this. In my first week, I was talking with at least a handful of agents every single day. So recruiting was easy back then. Now there's a lot more moving parts to it, but I will say this, and let me touch on this too, because I'm giving you the long answer.
Yeah.
Back then, it took me about 2 years because agents, I had some roll-up debt, a lot of agents. I was just bringing on anybody. I was doing what the MLMs do, throwing everybody against the wall and seeing what sticks. I don't do that anymore. And so now I actually have expectations. Like I expect an agent to sell that comes onto my platform. Back then, it was literally 1 out of 3 agents that I would recruit would sell something. I mean, it was like that, and it took a couple of years to see profit. So now, here's my advice is kind of follow my lead, follow Johnny's lead, become that pro, become the professional. Now, when you got the awards on the wall, when you were #1 agent with this company for 3 years in a row, when you're #1 agent with that company, when you're meeting these people at these conventions and building relationships, people get to know who you are, especially, YouTube. And nowadays we've the way Meta works with Instagram and TikTok, if it's done right, they're going to follow you. It's going to be easier to recruit. You're still taking on a lot of risk. So make sure, honestly, that you still sell it. And like, Johnny, I know you still sell. Hey, yeah. I sold, I want to say 6-7 years into having my agency. So I led from the front that whole time. And finally I got to the point where I was like, well, I realized I didn't have to do it anymore, but I got to the point where I was like, I can use my time to do other things, like kind of do what I want. So in the beginning, and I say that because in the beginning, it's a sacrifice. If you're going to get into this business, you're going to produce at a high level. You're working your butt off. You're doing what most people won't do. Back then for me, I was driving all over Florida. I'm driving 2-3 hours to the area that I'm door knocking to come back 12 hours later, or staying in a hotel. I drove to Georgia. I've flown to Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina. So I've done those road trips because that's where there was leads. So it was a lot harder for me than it is now. Now you guys got, people like Johnny who've got a system where you could sit at home and do the same kind of production that I was driving all over the place for, sacrificing everything for. But whether you're building or not, it's still a sacrifice. And that's what I was getting at. So now, one thing I believe in is if you're new to the industry, or even in your first few years or several years, it's a sacrifice you're making. You're giving up a lot today, but one day you get to be where I'm at. I don't have to sacrifice anything. I'm jumping on a cruise ship in a couple of weeks. I got off a cruise ship a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I thought you just did.
We do whatever we want. We want to fly to New York to go goof around, go watch a couple of plays on Broadway. We'll go spend 4 or 5 days in New York. Again, I can still work with even my agents and the agency and my business partners from the hotel room, from the cruise ship. So it's a amazing business, but it's not easy. It's really not easy. It really does take that sacrifice.
Definitely. Yeah. What is your, I guess, advice to help prevent roll up? Obviously, you're not going to be able to prevent it to a huge extent, right? But how do you kind of avoid, what are the things that you've learned over the course of building in Final Expense? Okay. So here's what I'll tell you. In the beginning, the one thing I was bringing on so many agents and so few of them were doing business. And the one weakness was I wasn't communicating with them. I wasn't building a relationship with the agency, with the agents. I wasn't doing that very well. So number one, that's what you have to do. You need to be in communication with your agents. Now, and I work with independent agents. When an agent sells something, I'm asking them to send me a text. I want to see what you sold. Let me know so I can celebrate with you. If you're having a rough week, I need to know about this. So if I don't hear from them after a certain amount of time, I've got another partner that helps with the training and helps with the sales system. So if he's not communicating with them and they're not communicating with me, I'm reaching out. So that's the one thing. You got to stay in communication. What you don't want to do is suddenly realize, ooh, somebody's selling something because I'm getting paid, and not know who it is, because that's when people start getting bad ideas. And I've had it all done. I've had the agent who purposely I had one agent who went to a bunch of his Medicare clients
and sold them one carrier, and then after the first sale, he started going back to them all and just switching it to another carrier that he didn't have with me. And so, like immediate, it was like within a few months, it was like $15,000 of debt where I thought I was going to make maybe $1,500. And that's the risk. We're taking on all this risk, to make a little bit of money, to squeeze a little bit off the top. When you're working with independent agents, that's how it is. So you have to keep on top of your agents, build the relationship. Communication is very important. And by doing that, by knowing who's doing what, you're not going to have a lot of roll up. So now I don't have the issues that I've had. And again, I've had it all. I've had them do it on purpose. I've had them do it on accident. I had a downline agent who was selling at a high click. He died. And now she got stuck. All his clients started falling off the book. And all of his debt rolled up to her. She couldn't afford it. She was in no position to afford it. So she went out of business and it rolled up to me. So you name it, I've seen it. And it's kind of one of those things where if you're doing it right and you're helping enough people, enough agents to make it work, and you've got enough agents to make it work, it's the cost of doing business. It really is. Thankfully, we have the ability to chase after those agents that do it on purpose. I've got one guy who's actually on Medicare now who, guess what? I get a piece of his check every month. And it's not cool, but what he did to me was on purpose. And that wasn't cool. So thankfully, we have ways to do it. But there's, the old saying, you can't get blood out of a turnip. So there's only so much you can do once you allow an agent to roll debt up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you say you're getting a piece, like you're getting a piece of his Medicare stuff?
I do. So the judge required that he pays me a piece. I think it's like whatever the bare minimum is. Now I don't even remember what it is. It's either it's either 5 or 10%. I think I'm getting 10% of his check.
Because that's interesting, because I've heard that like you can't that if you go to court, like it's not really going to hold up or anything like that, or it's not like anything like that. I was curious about that.
All right, so here's the trick. If they're getting paid through a company, you got to get your attorney to make sure you get paid through the company. So that's why I'm able to do it. So if you're depending on the agent to make a monthly payment to you, they're going to miss months. You're going to be in court more than you're going to get checks, because you're going to go back and the judge isn't going to say, well, you need to pay Mr. Massey or we're going to throw you in jail. The judge, they don't do that. They look at the hardships, they look at the reality, and they go, yeah, you screwed up, but Mr. Massey, you took on you're the one that took responsibility on the debt. So yeah, you need to pay Mr. Massey back, but I don't have any money. And so that's where it's hard. It really is. So you got to hope that they get more successful as time goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
If they failed with you, hope they succeed somewhere so that you can actually get a piece of it later. But you do need to start the process within a few years. I will say that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So when you say like instead of them paying you, it's like the company, like you have a third party company that's collecting the money.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
A third party who collects. The idea is to collect through their job, really.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Problem is, most agents that do this, when they do that, when they roll up debt, those are usually the type of people who don't have a job. That's been my experience. And that's what it is. It's always that, they're basically, look, I've had debt. My wife had debt at one point. We've all been there.
Yeah.
But at some point you got to do the right thing. With us, with our business, it's not like, we're these people that are just major corporations where no one's getting hurt, because it does hurt. My first few years, it hurt. I was making payments to life insurance companies that were thousands of dollars a month. And if I wasn't selling at such a high level, I would have been probably the guy that was like, how do I pay off my debt, going out of business, looking into a different, potentially rolling debt up to my upline. So you've got to be responsible. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's where a lot of agents, they get recruited by those companies that start with S and end with Y, or they got like three acronyms, starts with F, end with L. They get recruited. They see this show on stage, and it's this guy who talks about how his life was changed and all this stuff, and he went from hardships to hero, and now he lives in this big mansion. But what you don't hear is that's like 3%, 2% of the people that do this. I mean, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. And that's the one thing I've learned. You've got to have the right personality. If you're going to build an agency, if you're going to do this, you have to have the right mindset. You've got to have the right work ethic. It's not like you're just going to recruit people and they're going to make money for you. No, it does not work that way. You are most likely going to fail no matter what. And that's kind of what I realize. When I look back at the three, the Cody, the DeFord, myself, we're still doing it, but I have seen a lot come and go, start their YouTube channel, people that were agents under my agency, under their agencies, come and go and get into debt and it not work. I've seen more of those that failed than unfortunately that succeeded. It's just, it's the business. This is the way I see it. This business, I love it because you don't have to go $100,000 in debt to get the degree, right? We know where I'm talking, the degree. And now, here you are trying to pay off this college degree and you got a job making $50,000 a year. Guys, I am a proud high school dropout. College would not have worked for me because I was never ready to do that. And I make more money than my doctor. I make more money than two of the attorneys that I work with. This business can be really lucrative if you have the right personality, and you don't have to go $100,000 in debt to get into it. You need a couple $1,000s, or you need to get with a good agency that has like a no cost subsidized type of lead program where they'll teach you the business, and you've got to find something that works for you. The skill set takes time. The learning curve takes time. It's a process.
Yeah.
And if you're slow like me, it's going to take you longer than someone who's probably fast like Johnny.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because I think that was I think it's just kind of part of the game what I've realized, but I think I'm trying to still figure it out, and it's like, that's I don't know, like it's just really tough because I know like I've definitely like had my hardships, and it's like early on in the business trying to figure things out. You would have to pay these chargebacks back, but like you just use that money to pay for leads. Those didn't work out. You also have a mortgage or rent or mortgage, whatever. And so obviously things can get really hard. And so, but I'm trying to figure it out too, because it's like, okay, these people have chargebacks, but then they of course can't pay the chargebacks because they're not producing and they're not making money. So of course they're not going to be able to pay the chargebacks. And then it's interesting to see like exactly what you were saying is like, these people start growing massive numbers in agencies, and then all of a sudden, like I just have to always question in my head, like, okay, are they gonna they gotta get hit with a massive wave of chargebacks at some point, and it's nice because now it's like rolling and people are making a lot of money, but I'm like at a certain point, that's gonna come to them, at some point, right? It has to. So, yeah.
Look, I think the safest builder system is when you're selling like what Johnny's doing at a high level, and maybe you decide, let me open a little local office and go there and sell, and now I can bring on an agent and basically hire them, give them some free leads, lower comp, teach them how to do it, bring them in to produce. Here, I'll give you one. I've got one agent, and this is what she does. She's very smart, and she's a producer. She opened her little office, and what she did was she brought in an agent, taught him how to sell, and he has off weeks, on weeks. So she pays him like a base, and she gives him like bonuses. So she's got it to where she's keeping all the commission. She pays him a base
Nice.
bonuses, and she just brought a second person in. And so the way she does it, she uses My Appointments platform. So the way I do it is our agents spend a lot of money on advertising. They spend at least $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. I had one agent spend $3,000 a week on advertising so that they can get all these appointments, which is basically a higher intent lead. They fill out the lead form and they set an appointment, so the intent is higher. So what she does is very smart. She takes the appointments and gives them the leads of the people that don't set the appointments.
Yeah,
So
that's
she's
awesome.
getting the more low hanging fruit. She's with the agents in the office, so they got to work. And so to me, that's your building scenario, because now she's on top of everything that's going on in the office. That is like the
Yeah.
safe way. And the one agent's making money. That's why she brought on the second one. It's working. So
Yeah.
if you do it right, and to me, that's the way to do it. Now, I'll give you one other perspective. So I went this route 8 years ago, maybe, and decided telesales. That was when I got into telesales, right? So I got an office. I had 3 agents in there. And after just a month, I realized that I hated being a babysitter. That was what I felt like. I would rather be in the field. That's my personality. Going, driving 2, 3 hours away, work in an area, coming back with a bunch of sales, than be on the phone and, again, babysitting. That's how I felt. I was a
Yeah.
babysitter. And that was, so you've got to make sure you have, I literally, so the lease I had, it was a brand new building. And so now the guy that I rented it from could actually get more from more people, from other people, than he charged me. So I told him, I was like, hey man, how do I get out of the lease? He's like, well, when do you want to leave? I'm like, as soon as I can. I don't want to do this anymore. And he let me
Yeah.
off the lease. He just let me off. I was like, cool, beautiful. So I got lucky, but I found out the hard way that I got myself in something that I hated doing. I really didn't like it. So now I run my agency right from here. From my filming studio, from my home office, and that's the way I like it. That's my comfort level too. So again, I was thinking back then it was like a sacrifice, and I realized I didn't have to make it because I hated it. And so I kept selling. I went back out in the field and I sold for a few more years. So and now, no more sacrifice.
Yeah, that's nice. I think it's obviously everybody where everybody wants to get to, and I think like I've definitely learned a lot recently just with the free lead program, and it's been a lot, but then also like okay, I can make a lot of money just on my own pen. Like, what does that actually look like, and how do I maximize that? Because it's like, okay, you could make videos, you can do all these things, and like you can sell. Like, I was selling 20,000 a month, but I'm like, no, like I actually if I believe in this, how much do I believe in this? And I'm like, no, I can actually go out and rip a good amount of money just by myself, right? And so I think it's constantly reinstilling in me like this business is really cool. Like the life insurance space is very unique that has such a massive market that like you just have to take a small amount of it and you can make a lot of money. So I appreciate you coming on here. Where can people follow you, find you, work with you? Where can people
Absolutely.
go?
Well, I've got the YouTube channel. A lot of, I do kind of what you do, Johnny. I put
Of
out a
course.
lot of good information. You just got to go on YouTube and look up Douglas Massey, Massi. The agency is United Final Expense Services, where we have an appointments platform where if you literally want 30 appointments on your calendar every single day, we can make that happen.
Solid. Let's go. Well, guys, follow him. Check him out. And I mean, here's the thing: is like we we make content. We do the thing. We would just want to help you guys at the end of the day. So whether you work with me, you work with him. At the end of the day, like you're gonna choose a really solid option. So again, Doug, appreciate you hopping on here. We'll
Awesome.
chat soon.